twilight region. The streets through which we passed were so narrow and the old houses so far overhung the path that the strip of sky at the top of the dark canyon was a mere line of inlaid blue enamel flecked with gold. The splendid mashrubiyah windows thrust out toward each other big and little bays, across the 10 or 12 feet of distance which parted them, as if to whisper secrets, yet the delicate wooden carvings skilfully hid all that they wished to hide, and only suggested their secrets. "Now we'll soon be coming to the House of the Crocodile," said Allen. "By Jove, it's a joke on us, and a smart one if it's been turned into a hasheesh den under our noses. But it must be something new, or we should have got into it. The chief thinks already he can guess who's at the bottom of the business and who has put the money up, a certain Bey in whose service the caretaker was, a rich old Johnny, very old-fashioned, who lives not far off in a beautiful house of the best Cairene period. He's keen on antiques, and has been of service to the government in several ways, though he's a reformed smuggler, and his only son, dead now, was a hopeless hashash. That's what they call slaves of the hasheesh habit. I suppose you've read all about the hashishain of the Crusaders' days, whom we speak of assassins? Well, ever since then the hashishain have had a bad reputation. But this old man I speak of has been pitied for his son's failings, which he pretends to think a judgment for his own past repented sins. Now, Lord Ernest, saunter please, as if you were a tourist in my charge, admiring the old doorways." 2 native workmen appeared in front of us, with pickaxes on their shoulders. Stopping, they threw down their tools. One produced a cord which he stretched across the street from house to house, and in the middle he hung a small red flag. Then the pair began to pick in a leisurely way at the surface of the road, and before we reached the barrier an Arab policeman stationed himself by the cord. Glancing ahead, I saw that the farther end of the narrow lane was blocked in the same manner. "This is one trick we have of doing our work quietly," said Allen. "It always answers pretty well." I said nothing, but used my eyes. Coming from nowhere apparently, there were 20 men in the street. A few had crowbars in their hands. Others, native policemen, carried the canes with which they control the movements of the people. From the shadowed doorway of large house a native sergeant of police stepped out as we approached, and saluted Allen. Over the closed door a large, dryly smiling, ancient crocodile hung. "Have our men come and taken their places?" asked my companion in Arabic. "Yes, Effendi," the sergeant answered. "All has been done according to order. The back entrance, which was the water gate before the old canal was filled up, is surrounded, and the adjoining houses with which some communication may have been established are watched. Not a rat could have crawled out since we came, nor could one have gone in. Today is the feast of a saint, and these people have their excuse not to open the house to visitors, for so it is with other show places. Look, it is written up that until tomorrow there is no admission." As the man pointed to a card hanging from a hook, he and Allen smiled at the cleverness of this pretext for closing the door. In English, French, and Arabic the reason was announced in neat print. Probably this was not the first time the same excuse had been used in the same way. "They must have taken alarm at something, and thought they were being watched," Allen said to me. "That's why they've sported their oak. I expect we shall make a haul, as, for everybody's sake concerned, they wouldn't dare let their clients out, to fall into a trap. Yes, that's why, or else—" He stopped, and I did not ask him to go on, for I knew that to ask would be useless. Yet I guessed what he had meant to say, and why he had stopped. He didn't wish to alarm me, but it was in his mind that the house had been closed because of something planned to happen inside. And that something might be connected with my friends. We should soon know. My first thought was that we were to get through the door by breaking it in, or by forcing those on the other side to open for us. In an instant, however, I realized that my idea was absurd. It would take an hour to batter down that thick slab of old cedar wood, and Allen had said that he wanted to do things quietly. No, the brown sergeant was not here to open the door, but to see that it did not open unless for our benefit. 2 of Allen's men were unfolding a curious ladder like a lattice, which they made secure with screws when they had stretched it to full length. Then up it went to one of the beautiful mushrbiyeh windows which, on the level of the story above the ground floor, bayed graciously, overhanging the street. One man standing below held the ladder firmly in place, while another, small and lithe as a monkey and enjoying the task as a monkey might, ran up to the top that leaned against the window. Evidently he was a skilled worker, for before I knew what he would be at, he had with some small, sharp instrument prized out without breaking it, one of the sections of carved lattice. This he tossed lightly down to a man who caught it, and as he and 4 others after him slipped through the opening, the sergeant knocked on the closed door, under the swinging form of the crocodile. Nobody answered, but 3 minutes passed, and then suddenly there was the sound of a falling bar, and a very old, very dark man, with a white turban and a white beard, peeped out. "Thieves!" he cried in Arabic. "Thieves break in at the window!" He was making the best of a bad business, I guessed, and hoped somehow to justify himself to the police. But though he was grey with fright, he forgot to look surprised. My Arabic was not equal to the strain of catching all the gabble that followed. The old man protesting that it was right to close the house today, that if it were the police and not thieves who broke in it was unjust, it was cruel, and his son Mansour, the caretaker, would appeal to all the powers. Before he had come to the end of his first breath, he was hushed and handcuffed, and hustled away, and another man sprang forward from behind the angle of a screen wall inside the entrance. He was young, and looked strong and fierce as an angry giant, but at sight of Allen and the rest of us, he stopped as if we had shot him. Perhaps he had not expected so many. In any case, he saw that there was nothing he could hope to gain by violence or bluster. All he could do was to protest as his father had done, that this visit was a violation of his right to close the house on a holiday. "Don't be a fool, Mansour," said Allen, who evidently knew him. "You understand very well that isn't why we are here. You've got a hasheesh den upstairs, above the public show rooms. A nice trick you thought you'd played us, but you see you didn't bring it off." By this time we were inside the house, having thrust the caretaker in again, and passing the 3 tortuous screen walls of the entrance into a courtyard. Several young Arabs dressed as servants stood there, large-eyed, and stricken at sight of their giant master held by 4 policemen. But there was not a sign of our men who had crawled through the window, and I was impatient to go where they had gone. There was no sound of scuffling, no sound at all, except the crying of some startled doves, and Mansour's voice, swearing by the Prophet's sacred beard that if anything were wrong he was not the one to blame. There were those above him who must be obeyed or he and all that were his would be put out of life, but I cared too little for him, or what might become of him and his, to listen much. I looked up and saw at the left of the courtyard, with its several closed doors, a short flight of steps with a mounting block and a doorway leading to a winding staircase. Round the court went a gallery, supported with old marble pillars, and underneath on one side was a large recess, the taktabosh, raised slightly above the level of the courtyard, and having a row of wooden benches round its 3 walls. Here the caretaker and his male relatives and friends had evidently been smoking their nargilehs and drinking coffee. Our arrival had disturbed them in the midst. Suddenly, into the frightened mourning of the doves, broke a sharp sound of cracking wood. "Come along," cried Allen. "They'll be past the barrier in a minute." And leaving Mansour and the others to be dealt with by subordinates, he led the way up the steep stairs at a run. We did not stop at the first story, the show part of the House of the Crocodile, but catching a glimpse of a latticed balcony off the landing, all lovely mushrbiyeh work, and a great room of Persian tiled walls and coloured marble floor beyond, we dashed up another flight of stairs to the story above. These stairs were of common wood, and somewhat out of repair. At the top was a door of carved cedar wood like those below, but rough in execution, faded, and with here and there a star point or triangle of the pattern missing, leaving a hole in the thick wood. On this door was nailed a large card with the notice written English, French, and Arabic, "Forbidden to the public." What a grand idea to install a hasheesh den here, I could not help thinking as I followed at Allen's heels to the head of the stairs, where 2 of his men worked with crowbars to prise open that theatrically dilapidated door. Behind the pair who worked there were the others who had entered by the window below, and hardly had we taken our places in the strange queue, when with a loud groan the door gave way. The couple in front almost fell into a dark passage on the other side, and my heart leaped, for I half expected to see